Hi, this is part 4 of the video series, What is the Magellan Course? In part 3, we looked at dialectical reasoning in relationship to the evolution of the structures of consciousness. Today, in part 4, we're going to look at dialectics and dialectical reasoning with respect to some contemporary theories of cognitive development. Now, the interesting thing in doing this video is that to look at the role of dialectical reasoning in cognition, we are forced to choose what model of development we will consider, because the model that we choose greatly influences or determines how we answer this question: what is the role of dialectical reasoning in cognitive development? And so, in order to make this choice in this video transparent, I wanted to go over an overview of the different models of development, current models of development, a little brief history of the models of development. Now, interestingly enough, when we look at the categories, or we categorize the models of development, we find that they themselves are set up in a sort of polar relationship. So for the purposes of this video, we are considering Western, in other words, not Eastern versions. And even within the choice of the Western model of development, we are going to consider primarily Anglo-American and not the contradistinction, which is more continental or Marxian influence. So I think this is, this itself points to the dialectical mind, or the dualistic mind. We have within just this inquiry the problem of choosing East versus Western versions of cognitive psychology. And then even within the Western version, we have the choice of biasing either an Anglo-American approach or a continental Marxian approach. And just to give you a short taste of what that is, the Anglo-American approach is biased toward nature and genetics and structuralism. And the continental Marxian approach is more emphasizes culture, nurture and relatedness, relationalism. And also, in terms of the Anglo-American, the emphasis is on individual capacity. And the emphasis over here is on the role of world or life experience. And you'll see that there's some of this tension even within the Anglo-American field. But within the Anglo-American field, we're going to look at, again, another split in the preferences for modeling cognitive development. And this is a more current, very update division that we will see and look at. So within this bias of primarily an Anglo-American models of cognitive development, So we have to make sure that we're limiting ourselves to that. There are two major camps that we can spell out that we'll look at in a little more detail today. And the first camp emphasizes skills, and the second camp emphasizes what we might say meaning making. We might say that, for those of you who know some of the significant players here, that the skills camp is exemplified by Piaget and the neo-Piagetians, and the meaning camp by Jane Loevinger. And of course there's, a tendency to see this as a masculine, feminine tendency here too. Okay, the skills camp tend to measure, so what do they measure? They tend to measure cognitive capacity. And in the meaning, models tend to measure language use. The experiments in the skills models are problem solving. Whereas the experiments in the meaning models are sentence completion tests. And how individuals process and manipulate symbolic representation through language, primarily through language. The skills models tend to be more mathematically measurable and reducible, whereas the meaning models tend to require a great deal of interpretation, not surprisingly. And this is a contention between them, because there is a contention that this is empirical work and this is less than empirical. The skills models tend to emphasize what Piaget is known as genetic epistemology. In other words, that there are genetically inherited structures that proceed in genetically inherited stages. And the meaning models tend to look at dialectical movement in life that's a little more fuzzy and complex. The meaning-making people are attempting to become established as being more empirical and to make stronger statements about structure of stages. But from the perspective of the skills models, the judgment is that they fail at doing that because they're not as mathematically measurable. And then there is a kind of line drawn in the sand, because from the perspective of the meaning-making models and within the skills models themselves, the only genetic stages there are, all the genetic stages go from pre-operational, these are Piaget's stages, pre-operational to concrete operational to formal operational. And at formal operational, we are measuring skills that have to do with abstractions. And so according to the skills models, there's nothing higher than formal operations, although the most recent models have outlined very, very high level ways of working with abstractions and abstract systems. But in this line of cognitive development theory, there is no clear agreement that there's any actual genetic stage above formal operations. Whereas this line of cognitive developmental models makes a claim that there are actually stages in adult development, when you look at it, the whole picture, that are clearly beyond and discrete and different and novel from formal operations stages. And one of the significances is that it rejects a lot of the claims of formal operation. So it rejects the claims of under that formal operations. It makes meaning beyond the operations or the claims of formal operations. And so that's one of the reasons why we are going to look a bit into this camp, but we will emphasize the more recent work in the meaning-making area of cognitive development, because we are interested in studying cognitive development beyond the level of formal operations, and only people studying in this meaning-making models have made a claim that there are levels beyond formal operations.